Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. This is the testimony. When the Jews did not deny it, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." Then they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Who are you? Let us have an answer for those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way of the Lord.' As the prophet Isaiah said, Now they had been sent from the Pharisees, and they asked him, "Why then are you baptizing, if you are neither the Messiah, nor Elijah, nor the prophet?" John answered them, "I baptize with water. Among you stands one whom you do not know, the one who is coming after me. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandal." This took place in Bethany across the Jordan, where John was baptizing. The Gospel of the Lord.
Our weeks of preparation for Christmas, my dear brothers and sisters, changes a little bit today, changes course as we get closer to Christmas, which is evident in the color of the vestments and other things as well. But it changes from a long-term anticipation that takes place with the holy people of Israel to something that is very proximate now, and the joy that that involves, knowing that the Lord is very close, and as John says in the Gospel too, is even among us and unseen in the history of how the mystery of Christ's birth and his public ministry developed. So it changes course for us, and it's very good for us to follow the church's tempo and to see what it wishes us to celebrate today, and to renew within our hearts that sense of joy and peace as well, but the joy of knowing that salvation has come to us and will come to us very soon in these days ahead. And it's good for us to reflect on that this week, and also in the readings that are here presented for us. A very unique choice this week is that we don't have a psalm today. In place of the psalm, we have Mary's proclamation to Elizabeth from Luke's Gospel of her Magnificat, of the blessings that she had received in the midst of the intercourse and dialogue she had with Elizabeth in the visitation. And she speaks of the blessings the Lord has bestowed upon her, and invite all of us to look at that and pray that even this week. It's a prayer that the church sings and recites every night at Vespers throughout the world, and is one dear to the hearts and especially to the church itself. It's her proclamation of joy of the Lord's blessings that have been bestowed upon her. And in many ways that captures the spirit and the aspect that the church invites us to in the celebration we have today. The other thing I wish I also just a call to mind for a brief reflection for us today also, is that we have a few instances in the Gospels, including today, where people ask, in many ways demand, the identity of somebody. So the chief priests come out from Jerusalem to the Jordan River where John is baptizing today, and they ask him bluntly who he is. What is your identity? And so many times an answer is given that is a recitation of a passage from the book of the prophet Isaiah. And he speaks those words which are dear to us also from these past weeks and during the weekday readings, he describes himself as the voice of one crying in the wilderness. The same kind of thing happens later in another gospel that we have, where John is in prison now, and he goes to Jesus and asks, "Are you the Messiah or not?" And maybe he's despairing a little bit just because of the suffering he's going through. But John is told by his disciples who returned from Jesus that Jesus said, "Look at the signs. Look how those who the blind see, the lame walk." And again, Jesus recites from the book of the prophet Isaiah that we have today in the first reading to describe his own identity. What it means for us is that the identity of Jesus, even the identity of John, are things beyond comprehension and beyond being captured with a little phrase to say, this is who they are. This involves what the mystery of their person is. And for Jesus, very often, as we see in his ministry, but it's good for us to reflect upon, the mystery of who he is far beyond what words can capture, especially our weak words. And so he often describes himself in these words or keeps his identity hidden because the mystery will reveal itself. It also reflects upon ourselves, not to allow ourselves to be identified by one thing or two things. The mystery of who we are, created in God's image, is something far beyond being able to be captured in weak human words, but it has a dignity and a magnificence that's beyond anything like that. It's good for us to be careful and also to be aware of that, and to see how careful Jesus is, but also John is, in identifying exactly who he is. It also tells us how dear these passages from the book of the prophet Isaiah were to them. Something they learned as children, something they prayed, something they reflected upon, so that these words came to mind immediately when they first of all had to discern with God their own identity, and then Jesus being able to speak of them beautifully and clearly. The same with Mary. What did Mary teach Jesus as a child? These passages from the book of the prophet Isaiah. The same kind of thing that we learn with repetition, praying again and again, so that they reside in our hearts with a firmness and a foundation that can never be taken away. And let that be the source of our joy. We know in our hearts the coming of Christ, and the coming of Christ is very near for us now. And in joy, we go towards these last weeks, these less than 2 weeks before the celebration itself, and commit ourselves to a joyful